Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. I'm gonna do another. I decided I'm gonna do another whip and chat. As you know, this is those of you who have been subscribed and seen other videos of mine. Um, I'm still working on. This is my last canvas aside from the horror hubby challenge one. I've got two squares left, two sections left on that one that I'm gonna do later. Um, and then it's all done. I decided I'm going to work on this one for a little bit. This is my flower cat, so I've already done one video of it, one whip and chat. I thought, what the heck, I'll do another one. Today is, what day? It's Sunday. Let's see. Oh, Sunday, October 13th. And, so it's Thanksgiving weekend here in Canada. I actually didn't realize that until today through Facebook Messenger. Someone mentioned it in one of the group chats that I'm in. So it explains why my dad phoned me yesterday and invited me over for dinner for tomorrow night. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be nice not having to cook for myself. I am not a very good cook. I can tolerate my own cooking. I would not want to risk it on anybody else because I have not done much cooking in the last 10 years. So anyways, yeah, I was in a relationship for almost 10 years. And yeah, he did the majority of the cooking. I very seldom did. And now that I'm living on my own, just me, myself, and my putty tat Peaches, yeah, I have to cook for myself. So I stick to basic, simple things that I know how to cook. Plus, I have an air fryer. Thanks to my dad and his girlfriend. They got a new one and they gave me their old one. And yeah, so the air fryer that they gave me is the perfect size for one person. I like having electrical things, stuff that I can plug in to do my cooking, because I am on propane, living in a fifth wheel. Yeah, so I have to be even more alert and observant with my cooking with being on propane, because if not, well, it burns. Yeah, so there were a couple of times I ended up with more than slightly overcooked bacon. Not burnt, but almost. Still edible. It was okay. I ate it. I have a very weird palate. I can totally handle very bland food. Eating bland food. Like, I'm not a fan of salt and pepper. I have salt and pepper. I think the only time I've ever actually used the salt is when I had corn on the cob. Yeah, I add salt to my corn on the cob, and that's it. I have not touched my pepper, except to move it out of the way. I actually I have seasoned salt, which I love using. I also have onion powder and garlic powder. I use those. Not very often, but I do. When I make pork chops, when I fry pork chops, what I did was I made a mixture of the three: seasoned salt, garlic pepper, and onion pepper powder. Garlic powder and onion powder. I made a mixture of the three, and yeah, I sprinkle that on my pork chops. I haven't tried it. Wait, I might have tried it on my chicken. Ooh, I should do that tonight. Yeah. I got a package of 4 pieces of chicken from the food bank, so yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do for dinner tonight. Because, yeah, I put it in the fridge to cook. So I'll do that. My air fryer is clean. Yeah, I'm a procrastinator when it comes to doing dishes. It was one of those things that was, I had to do it when I was growing up. I hated doing dishes when I was growing up. But if I had a choice between washing dishes and drying and putting away, I'd rather wash. Because then I can just stand there in front of the sink and not have to wander around the kitchen looking for where each item goes. Yeah. Speaking of washing dishes, yeah, the other day when I got my package, my Amazon package, when I was coming home, I noticed that the restaurant is open. Oh yeah, I mentioned this in my last video. So yeah, apparently I did not get the job, the dishwashing job. Which I can kind of understand why. Because, well, I am on the plus size. I am in my mid 40s. I don't have the best smile. It's a very gap-toothed smile. I am missing a couple of teeth that are very noticeable when I smile. If you watch the video, the one and only video where I am actually in the video, you'll see my gap-toothed smile. Yeah, and that's the reason why, that's the biggest reason why that's the only video that I am in. Yeah, I don't really like being on video. But I will do video chats. I'm okay with doing video chats. With certain people. Like I do video chat. I'll do a video chat with my daughter. Or my friend in Colorado. And yeah, I did a video chat a couple of times with an ex, but he had a reason why he wanted to do a video chat, and well, no. I'm a good girl these days. Oh, well, I try to be a good girl these days. I don't do naughty videos. No, I'm not like that. No, not anymore. I used to be so... I probably shouldn't be talking about this kind of stuff. Yeah, I used to be pretty reckless when I was younger. And yeah, after high school, after I had my first child, all of that stuff, I did some pretty dumb stuff in high school. But I did graduate, at least. I was pregnant at the time, but yeah, I did graduate. I went away to a group home for young pregnant girls. I was 18 at the time, and I was one of the oldest girls there. Yeah. The youngest, oh goodness, I think the youngest was like 12. Yeah, if I remember correctly, I believe she was 12. This is almost 30 years ago. It's amazing that I still remember any of the stuff from back then. Well, yeah, I actually do remember a fair bit from back then. Um, yeah, I was 18. I was pregnant. Um, I was still in school, still in high school. Um, the guy that got me pregnant, yeah, he was 21. No, wait, 20. Yeah, he's 2 years older than me. Um, yeah, he was 20 when he got me pregnant. And then he turned 21. And then I turned 19. Yeah, so, anyways, yeah. Um, I went and I stayed at this group home for young pregnant girls. I finished high school while I was there. Um, got my high school diploma. And so, yeah, while I was there, some of the requirements, you had to go to school, you had to go to the learning center every morning during the week. So it was just in the mornings. Um, and they provided you with a bus pass. And there was a public pool just down the road. There was a thrift store not far down the road either. Um, you could hop on the bus. The bus would stop right at the end of the street. And the house was like 2 houses from the street, from the main road. And yeah, you could hop on the bus. You could go downtown. So this was in a big city. This was in the city, I almost said Kelowna, Kamloops in British Columbia, Canada. If you know anything about British Columbia, Canada, or Kamloops, yeah. So the afternoons, we each afternoon of the week was something different scheduled. Depending on how many girls were staying at the group home. There was a counselor, a mental health counselor that would come either once or twice a week, depending on the amount of girls. We had to keep up with prenatal appointments with with our doctor. And we got a weekly allowance. We had chores that we would have to do. There was a daily chore, and then there was also a weekly chore. The weekly chore was done like once a week. The daily chore was something that you had to do every day. And it rotated. You got a specific day to do your laundry, and you had to keep your room clean. And then there was like a 10 p.m. curfew. You had to be like, you had to be upstairs because all the bedrooms were upstairs. And then downstairs was the kitchen plus the dining area and like the living room area. It was just like one big, really big room. I actually had the biggest bedroom. It just happened to end up that way, that I ended up with the biggest room, because when I first got there, the only room available was the biggest room of all of the bedrooms. Which was awesome. I thought it was awesome. I had so much space in my room. But anyways, yeah. So there were girls there from all over BC, different ages. I was there I celebrated my 19th birthday while I was there. My sister, who is 2 years older than me, she was in Australia visiting our aunt, who was there going to school, doing upgrading. And yeah, while my sister was in Australia and I was in Kamloops, our grandfather, our mom's dad, passed away. My grandmother contacted my dad, and my dad and my brother, my younger brother, he's 2.5 years younger than me. 2.5 to 3 years younger than me, something like that. They came and picked me up, and then we went to her grandmother's. She at the time lived in Richmond, which is not far, which is one of the small outlying towns or communities of Vancouver. Vancouver is like the biggest city in British Columbia, I think. Pretty sure. Anyways, one of. There's, I think, yeah, I'd have to Google it. But anyways, it's a big city. So our sister was unable to make it because she was in Australia visiting our aunt, our mom's sister. She was actually unreachable because she was doing, like, while she was in Australia, she ended up doing this backpacking experience called the Oz Experience backpacking. Well, they say it's backpacking across all the way up the East Coast, but it was like they would travel by bus from one area to another, and then the bus would drop them off at a hotel, and they'd be there for like 2 or 3 days or whatever, and then they'd hop on the bus and they'd go to the next location. But there was stuff to do while she was on this Oz experience. Unfortunately, our grandfather passed away. Our aunt, she came back to Canada. We just had a family gathering. My mom's side of the family was very small. So there was my aunt, my uncle, and his ex-girlfriend came with him. And then there was my dad, my brother, and I, as well as our grandmother. So yeah, there was a small gathering just of us. And it was just for the weekend. And that's all it really was. And it actually happened. He passed away in the same month as our mom passed away, only 9 years earlier. She passed away in September of 1987, a month before my 10th birthday. He passed away in September of 96, a month before my 19th birthday. And yeah, he had cancer in the lining of his lungs, which was really strange because he never smoked a day in his life. He also had it in the bones of his left leg or his right leg. I can't remember now. But he had only had the diagnosis for like a year. Whereas my mom, she had a brain tumor. She, when I was just a few months old, she had a seizure and dropped me on my head, yes. That was the first head injury of many. But yeah, she had a seizure and she dropped me. And then she dropped to the floor. She went to the hospital. They diagnosed her with epilepsy. Because, well, it's more common to have a seizure with epilepsy than with anything else. My mom refused to believe that she had epilepsy, but they treated her for epilepsy. Apparently, they were actually the doctors were talking behind closed doors about the possibility of it actually being a brain tumor, but they never looked into it. My brother was born in 1980, and shortly after he was born, she was having vision problems. There was spots in her eyes. She was having vision problems. She saw an eye specialist, and the eye specialist basically pretty much said, you're riddled with cancer. It's amazing you're still alive and walking around and all that stuff. So she went back to the doctors, and they re-diagnosed her correctly this time with a brain tumor. And she had a total of like 6 seizures between 1978, when she had her first seizure, and 1987, when she had her final seizure. And I know this because she had 4 operations. 4 operations. She didn't have an operation for her first seizure. But then the following 4 seizures she did. And each time they shaved all the hair on the left side of her head. And they would slice her open and take out as much of the tumor as they possibly could. But because she had gone incorrectly diagnosed for like 3 years almost, it had spread a lot. So, but they dug out, they removed as much as they could safely remove each time. And then the last seizure that she had was in 1987, and she ended up in the hospital. They did not operate this time. It was a really bad seizure, and she was in the hospital for, I really cannot remember how long she was in the hospital for, like a week or 2. She was bedridden. She couldn't speak. She, yeah. And then she went, the last 3 days, she never spoke a word. Never spoke a word. And then the last thing, but like my dad and us 3 kids, we would go and visit her. Like he was up there like every day after work. He'd be up there to see her and spend time with her and talk with her and all that stuff. And the majority of the time, we were left to fend for ourselves. Now, don't get mad. My sister was 12. She was old enough and perfectly capable of taking care of the 2 of us. My brother was 7. And I was 8. I was 9. Duh. I was 9. It was a month before my 10th birthday. Duh. So yeah, she was 12. She was old enough to babysit. And are there any D's in this? I'm talking and not paying attention to what I'm doing. Story of my life. There's no D's, no E, but there are G's. So yeah, we would go up there after school, and visit for a little bit, and then Dad would take us home. My sister would make dinner for us. We'd eat dinner, and then like he'd shower, change, and after dinner he'd go back up to the hospital, and he'd be up there for I don't know how long, because we would end up going to bed and he would still be up there. Yeah, her last day was the same as usual. We went home. Everything was good. He was about to come home. He was gonna go home, shower, change, and then go back up. And he was holding her hand, and he's like, well, I'm gonna go, I'll be back in a bit. And she looked at him and she said, I love you. And there was a nurse in the room at the time that she said this. And the nurse ran out of the room in tears. My dad went out into the hall and gave her heck for her reacting that way. And she's like, you don't understand. That's the first thing she's said in 3 days. So, yeah, that really shook my dad. But, yeah, he came home, and he's like, yeah, she's doing okay. I'm going to have a shower, get changed, and go back up there. And then the phone rings. And the 3 of us kids were just standing there watching him on the phone. And he just didn't really say much. And then he just started crying and swearing over the phone. And he didn't have to say a word to us. We just knew. We knew that it was to do with our mom, that she was gone. And yeah, it was hard. Unfortunately, it was a Thursday night, and my dad couldn't take the next day off from work. So my brother and sister, they had to go to school the next day. I didn't, because I ended up going and staying at an adult friend's house. I don't know if any of you remember, are old enough to remember, there was, I don't know if it still exists, but there was an organization, Big Brothers Big Sisters organization. It was for I had a big sister through the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization. And yeah, I ended up staying the night at her place that night, and I stayed at her place the next day. Unfortunately, my brother and sister, they didn't have that luxury. They had to go to school the next day. And I know it was really hard on them. Yeah, it was really hard on all of us, of course. But yeah, I don't know how things were for my brother and my sister, of course, because I'm not them. But I know it affected me for so many years. I couldn't talk about my mom at all for over 20 years without breaking down and crying. And the only reason I'm able to nowadays is because of the extensive counseling I've gone through over the years. But even with all of the counseling that I got, I still had trouble being able to talk with her about her without crying. I saw so many different types of counselors, so many different counselors over the years. It wasn't until, oh God, I couldn't tell you when it was. I'd have to do some serious thinking. It was during my first marriage. Well, I've only ever legally been married once. but I was common law for the last few years. But yeah, during my marriage, after having my second daughter, we were affiliated. I guess you could say we were affiliated. Some friends, they had started up a church, a branch of an international church. And I cannot remember the name of the actual church, but that theirs was affiliated with. But anyways, they had some friends from another town that they're special, like, Christian counselors, and they came to visit our church. Well, they came to our town to visit one weekend, and they came to our church. And our church, well, yeah, I say our church. I ended up becoming the librarian of this particular church. But the church was only around for a couple of years, unfortunately, for other reasons. But anyways, yeah, so they came to our church, and like, our church would gather every Friday evening, because we had the members of our congregation were from the Baptist church and the Alliance church. So, and now I see those pesky D's. Now that I'm on N, I see those pesky D's. What is it with the D? So, anyways, I ended up doing a counseling session with them. They ended up doing counseling sessions with whoever wanted them. I did one counseling session with them. One. And I told them about my mom and my past and this and that and all these other things, and yeah, brought them to tears. They were using the Kleenex just as much as I was. But after that one counseling session with that couple, I've done so much better. I'm able to talk about my mom without breaking down into tears, without crying. Although I am on the verge of tears right now, as you can tell from me sniffling. Because I haven't talked about this stuff from my past in a long time. It's been a long time. Yeah, I know it doesn't seem like it to me, but I know I've been through a lot in my life that most people would be like, whoa, hold your horses. Say, what? You went through that, and that, and that, and that, and that, and that? I know you may think I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. I've been pregnant 4 times. I've had 3 children. My second pregnancy was an ectopic that almost killed me. My ex-husband, he ended up getting arrested and going to prison for being a PDF file. Should be easy for you to figure out what the actual word is. But also because of him, I ended up losing custody of the 2 children that he and I had together. I ended up going through a phase, I guess you could say it was a phase. I ended up with an addiction. And it was actually through my addiction that he got caught and arrested and went to prison and whatnot. But between my addiction and him going to prison, I lost my parental rights to our 2 children. And thankfully they were able to be adopted by cousins of mine, my cousin and his wife, because they're unable to have children, and they had been talking a little bit here and there about about maybe adopting. And then when they learned from my uncle, as to my one uncle, as to what was going on with my life and my children, they're like, oh, 2 kids, could a possibility, maybe. And I was being told by the ministry, worst case scenario is you lose custody of the kids and they have to be put up for adoption. We'd rather have them with family. Do you have any family members? And I'm like, at the time I was like, no, I don't know of any family members on my side of the family. His side of the family was definitely no. And then I found out about my cousin and his wife, and it's like, oh, well, okay, there is that possibility. And then my living situation was a really bad one. Where I was living, while I was going to court and all of this stuff, and it was my third attempt of unaliving myself. Afterwards, I'm like, yeah, there's no way. Like, I can barely take care of myself. There's no way I can focus on trying to fight to get my children back, with what's going on in my life. So I messaged in my house, sitting up in my hospital bed, I messaged my cousin and said, start the paperwork for the adoption. And him and his wife, they were both overjoyed, and they were like, oh, thank you, this is so awesome. Don't worry, you will always have contact with them, and whatnot. And it's like, well, that's awesome, that's great. It's the best outcome that I could ever hope for, that I could still have contact with them and visit with them and all of this stuff. And yeah, their first Christmas with my cousins, I got a letter from my daughter. She did like a little Christmas letter, and that was it. That's the only contact I've had from those 2 children of mine. Because the ministry turned around and told my cousins during the adoption process, they're like, well, she's still in contact with her ex-husband. Yes, I know. He did bad things. He was in prison. I was still communicating with him. We were writing back and forth. He was a prison pen pal, basically. But like, I had known him most of my life. His mom was a really good friend of my mom's, and I have a huge heart. Like, I understand he did something wrong. He did something really, really bad. He knew what he had done was wrong. He was trying to get help while he was in prison, to deal with it. Excuse me. So yeah, but anyways, the ministry is like, well, as long as she's in contact with their father, then she can't have contact with her children. And it's like, okay, fine. So I cut contact with him, but I still no contact. I still to this day have not had any contact with those 2 children of mine. And it has been 13, 14 years, something like that. that I have not had contact with either of them. My oldest daughter, my other daughter, my oldest one, yeah, she has pictures. She has relatively recent pictures of the two of them, and they both look so much like their father. So much like their father. Yeah, I haven't seen them since my daughter was like 4. 4 or 5. I think yeah, 4 or 5. And my son was like a year and a half. Something like that. Maybe 2 years. It's been that long. They're always on my mind, yet I'm not always thinking about them because they're not far from my mind. Because if I think too deeply, I guess you could say, if I think too deeply about them, think too much about them, my depression gets really bad. I'm able to deal with it right now because of everything else that I'm talking about. I'm already very emotional at the moment, and I'm doing okay. I am doing okay. But yes, I miss them both. I wish that I had been there. I wish that I had been a part of their lives. I wish I had done a better job as a mother. Because yes, I did screw up a lot, but they always, when they were in my care, they were never spanked. I never yelled at them. They were never beaten. They always had food. They always had a bed to sleep in, a roof over their heads. They always had clean clothes. And there were times that, yeah, I had questionable people around them, but they were never left alone in somebody else's, in a stranger's care. Someone like, yeah. I relied heavily on my older daughter to help me with keep watching over them at times. If I was busy doing something, she kept an eye on them. And unfortunately, it caused her to kind of resent them a little bit. And which is unfortunate. But like my other daughter, my little girl, my the younger of the two, yeah, she had health problems when she was born, and which caused me to have to focus on her a lot. The first year of her life, I had to take her to see specialists in Vancouver, and yeah, her sister didn't like that I had to focus on her so much, on her baby sister. My doctor's orders were I had to let my husband take care of everything else. I had to focus on our daughter for the first year of her life, because when she was born, her shoulder got stuck in the birth canal, and it ended up damaging the nerves in her shoulder and elbow. And she was also born with what's called a bifid uvula. And that's where, like, you know, the little teardrop shaped dangly thing at the back of your throat. It's called the uvula. Well, hers is not teardrop shaped. Hers has a little divot in it. So I like to joke around and say it's a little bum cheeks. Unfortunately, it caused problems with her eating, with her breastfeeding and bottle feeding. She was burning more calories than she was taking in. And she would end up with air pockets, and she would end up bringing everything up that she had consumed. So for a while there, she was classed as failure to thrive. When she was 3 weeks old, she ended up with well, they said she had a urinary tract infection, but she actually didn't. Because the hospital in my hometown, they are not, no one there is trained to insert a catheter into an infant, a baby. Like, she was 3 weeks old. So they did what's called a pee bag, and bacteria got into the sample, the urine sample. So they're like, well, we're going to err on the side of caution and treat her for a urinary tract infection, even though she actually did not have one. They treated her for one anyways. But yeah, when she was 3 weeks old, ended up in the hospital with her in another city for the better part of a week. During the time that we were in the hospital there, I had to weigh her. Like, at the first day, it was every 2 hours. I would have to weigh her, and then feed her, then weigh her again, and then I had to supplement with formula based on how much she had gained, basically. And I had to do that every 2 hours. After feeding her, I'd have to pump so that I had breast milk to supplement with. So yeah, it's like every 2 hours I had to wake her up, feed her, like weigh her, feed her, weigh her, feed her, pump. And then there was the diaper changes and the bathing and eating and sleeping. And I could not do every 2 hours. After the first day, I was exhausted and I was sore. So when the doctor came in the next day, I'm like, because I had to do that throughout the night as well. And then I said, well, is there any way I can do every 3 hours? And the doctor's like, yeah, you can do every 3 hours, but you have to make sure she consumes such and such more every time. And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And I did. They originally, the nurses would wheel the scale in and weigh her, and then I'd feed her and then weigh her again and then supplement. But it got to the point where they just left a scale in the room. And so then I could weigh her myself every 3 hours. But it was exhausting because a lot of the times I could not wake her up. She was just exhausted. Like, I would strip her down to just her diaper, and I would put a cold, damp cloth on her back to try and shock her awake so that I could feed her. And she was 3 weeks old, and they would not let me leave the hospital with her until she was back up to her original birth weight. And also, unfortunately, because of how I had been acting, like the way I was when we first got to the hospital, my back was killing me because I have a bad back. I've had a bad back most of my life. I was sore, I was tired, I was stressed out. So the doctor was concerned about my mental health, and would not let me leave the hospital with her until after I saw a psychiatrist. So I had to wait to see a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist finally showed up, and got her back to her original birth weight by like Friday. But the doctor's like, no, you can't go home until you see a psychiatrist. I had to wait until Monday to see the psychiatrist. I talked with the psychiatrist. I was doing much better by that point in time because I was getting at least a little bit more sleep every 3 hours with everything else. So I was doing a lot better. She was up to a proper weight, back to her birth weight, and she was gaining. She was doing a lot better. I was feeling better. I talked with the psychiatrist, and he's like, "Yeah, there's nothing wrong. Yeah, I understand this was what was going on when you first arrived, but yeah, you can go home. Go home." So I was able to finally take her home. But yeah, as I've got this done, and holy crap, in less than an hour. Yeah. But yeah, so that was when she was 3 weeks old. We had the family doctor had scheduled for her to see. Well, he had reached out to a plastic surgeon in Vancouver to take a look at her arm, her shoulder and elbow. And that was when she was 3 months old. Was her first appointment. So I managed to get a ride from a friend to Vancouver, and he dropped us off at the hospital there, and excuse me, and saw the doctor, saw the plastic surgeon and an orthopedic surgeon. And they're like, and the plastic surgeon's like, well, yeah, she's doing good. This is what's going on. This is what's wrong. The orthopedic surgeon will go over some exercises with you. And I'm like, well, that's great. Now we just got to figure out why she's not gaining weight. When I said that, the plastic surgeon took one look in her mouth. And because this particular surgeon, she also worked with the cleft palate unit. She looked in her throat, down her throat. She spotted her bifid uvula, and she's like, well, this is your problem. I'm sending you over to the cleft palate unit right now. Boom. Went over to the cleft palate unit, saw a specialist there, and she's like, yep, this is what the problem is. It's called a bifid uvula. Basically, she's burning more calories than she's taking in. It's too hard for her. She can't get the right suction. So I had to switch her, I had to stop breastfeeding altogether, and I had to put her on a certain type of bottle with a special super soft, fast flow rubber nipple. So that all she basically had to do was I just tip the bottle, and it just pours into her mouth. So she wasn't having to suck, because it was the suction that was exhausting for her. So that's what we ended up doing. And then she started gaining weight quite beautifully. Yeah. So yeah, and I kept for 9 months, for 9 months, her birthday's in January, basically, from when she was 3 months old till the end of the year, for the rest of that year. So yeah, it was 9 months. I kept a written record of every time I fed her, how much I fed her, formula wise, how much I fed her, whether she kept it down or she brought it back up. She had the health nurse would come to the house twice a week. I would take her to see our family doctor once a week, and also had a lady that came twice a week to go over exercises to do with her for her shoulder and elbow. So every day of the week, minus Saturdays and Sundays, so 5 days of the week, I was doing something with her to take care of her. The health nurse would come by twice a week, and she would bring a scale and weigh her, and yeah, her weight was gradually going up. And she was on, and the ministry actually was providing us with formula for her, because we couldn't get the powdered formula, because there's 3 different types of formula. There's the powdered formula, there's the there's the concentrated where you add water to it, and then there's the ready to feed, where you shake it up, you crack it open, you pour it into the bottle, put the lid on, put the nipple on, and away you go. That was the type that we had to give her, but it's of course the most expensive. But it was doctor's orders, so the ministry was providing us with that formula. But yeah, every week that I took her to see the doctor, she would get weighed and he'd check her over, and I would write down her weight in my notebook. So I was keeping like very consistent every time I fed her. Every time I was keeping a record of all of it for those 9 months of that year. Like I slept on the couch every night. I slept on the couch. She slept in the bassinet part, like as a baby shower gift. His brother and sister-in-law had given us, it was a playpen / bassinet. So the bassinet part was on the top part. So she would sleep in the bassinet part right next to the couch where I slept. And because if I needed to get up in the middle of the night with her, she wouldn't disturb. My husband's schedule was, he was a baker, so he would go to bed at 6 o'clock at night and then be up at 11 o'clock to be at work, to leave by midnight to be at work by 1 a.m. So his work schedule, his sleep schedule, her sleep schedule, all of that stuff didn't jive. So she had a perfectly fine crib in the bedroom, but she couldn't use it because of just everything. So she slept in the living room, I slept in the living room, and it was just how life was. And but I worked my butt off to take care of that child, to take care of her. And I worked with her every single day on her arm. And she did beautifully. But as at the end of the day, I guess it doesn't really matter in the eyes of the ministry. Yeah. They screwed my life over. And then I found out last year, they screwed up with my case, royally screwed up. And if I had known, I could have taken them to court, and I could have sued them and made buckets of money. If I had known. Unfortunately, there is statute of limitations and whatnot, and at least they have a good home, 2 loving parents, both with good stable jobs. They have a grandfather there that visits them regularly, and they're doing good, and I know that. And that's something that I know I would never have been able to do for them. Because of all of the problems in my life, I have trouble with work. And I know I'm probably getting you down. It's pretty depressing. Anyways, my kids are good. They're fine. They're doing really good. The last I heard. My oldest, she's still living with her fiance. I guess you could say they're living common law now because they've been living together for over a year. Actually, over a year and a half. And I'm going to continue with working on this for a bit. And probably do another video later on down the road. Maybe I'll do one in a few days of finishing off my fantasy bottles. I don't know. We'll see. Oh, and actually, I think my next video might be on Wednesday, unless I do one before that. But Wednesday, I should be getting a package in the mail. Yay! Anywho, I'll see you then. Bye.